This episode of Kind of Funny Gamescast is brought to you by Movement Watches. Movement Watches was founded on the belief that style shouldn't break the bank. We're talking classic designs, quality construction, and styled minimalism. Perfect for any occasion. Movement figured out that by selling online, they were able to cut out the middleman and retail markup, providing the best possible price. Greg has his, and now he has a sexy-ass wrist, and he's never late. Get 50% off today with free shipping and free returns by going to movementwatches.com. That's MVMTwatches.com/kinda. Movementwatches.com/kinda. Join the movement. Did you like that one, Kev?
Yeah, I really like this sexy ass wrist.
My final question is, I think, since we do the morning show and go through the news and all this different stuff, there's often this battle cry of there's too much journalism, or journalism. When are people going to do real video game journalism in the way you'd expect the Washington Post to cover whatever and blah, blah, blah. And what I've noticed more and more with our industry PlayStation blogs put up this release date. Sites are regurgitating that or posting that. Regurgitating makes sound. They're putting that information out there, right? Because as a consumer, I don't want to go to the UB blog and the PlayStation blog and this blog and that blog to cobble this all together. Yep. Then it's mixed in with what you're talking about, the scoops you're getting, that Jason Schreier's getting, that Patrick's getting. What I notice a lot is the fact that Deadline and Variety and all these other entertainment-based news outlets look a lot like our video game news outlets in the same way that I think. Do you think that the future of video game journalism is more in that camp, or is it going to continue to mature and we're going to see your waypoints and your polygons break off and they are able to succeed doing, I'm only doing this, I'm not talking about that?
So it's first of all, I guess I never really answered your journalism thing in the first place. So I guess I should say, the biggest thing, and we are totally aware of that, right? The aggregation of the Reddits, the GAFs, all of that, and trying to become more than just, hey, we're publishing the marketing materials for this. At a certain point, if 8 releases get announced on one day, the top 8 stories on our site might all just be things that came directly from the publisher that you could find essentially anywhere. And so, to battle against that, one thing we're working on now is asking that question of, so what? And we're trying to do these more follow-up features of, okay, so Logan was number 1 at the box office this weekend, but what does that mean? And how does that compare to other X-Men movies? And what are the legs on it? And does opening weekend matter with inflation and all of that? And then so with video game press releases, maybe we do get the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy thing, but it doesn't say if it's exclusive. Sure. And that's the question we're asking is gotcha. Kind of enriching that story that way. So that's how we're fighting against that. As far as the future of games journalism, I think it's we're at this weird precipice now where everything I just said about enriching that story, we have to do, because I think ultimately Activision has a blog, Ubisoft has a blog, Sony has a blog, Microsoft has a blog, Nintendo has directs, more and more, you don't need a middleman to deliver to your audience. And maybe our audience right now might be bigger than the number of people who read the PlayStation blog, but the hardcore PlayStation crowd is still probably going to go directly to the source in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. And so I think in order to keep game journalism going, I think it is the things that aren't necessarily subscribing to that PR drop mentality, which is, the leaks and the scoops and things like that. But then it's also, if you are going to report on the thing that people have put out there, what can you add to
Added value.
What interview can you get to a company that is giving the people more information? So when they announced the Castlevania Netflix series, Jonathan immediately talked to the showrunner and got a little bit more on it, and got a little bit more context. And I think those are the cases where I like our news product, and I feel like it's worth coming to. I think the journalism thing is a real concern, and it's something that I think kind of left unchecked, it would be very easy for that to be the only thing we run. And I think that would be bad. And I do think at that point it would be well, as a reader of the site, as a fan of the site, why am I coming here and not just going to Sony or Ubisoft?
Well, I mean, I've always felt, even when I was there, that it's such a bad deal. It's such a bad look that you can't help, because I know firsthand from covering PlayStation for so long that there are gatekeepers. It can't be that I heard this about Naughty Dog and I go straight to Naughty Dog. You have to go to PlayStation to get to them to do that. And then PlayStation will give you, we don't comment on rumors and speculation. Yep. So you get to that point well, why even go to this? This relationship doesn't work. So it's impossible to do real journalism if you're just getting cut off at the knees. And that's where it is. I'm going to speak on background. I'm going to speak off the record. I'm going to speak with a fake name. I'm going to give you, that's why the leaks are so prevalent, because
what was your fake name?
My fake name, Joe Scrabbles. It's the only way to get any information out of these people that isn't PR approved, which gets so weird. And that's why, as you see more and more indies start to do stuff, that's interesting because those guys get to come out and speak with their mind on whatever they want to do.
Like a Steve Gaynor or Sean Vanneman can just get up and talk about their game more openly. I think as people get, and those are interesting examples actually, because you have these kind of high profile indie developers who are working with the big first parties. And so maybe they do have to, keep an eye on what they can say.
Yeah.
Whereas like when you get a fully true independent, like I can say whatever I want, smaller game, I think you do tend to get more candid answers.
Yeah.
Even like we mentioned Dunham, like the interview he did here and the interview he did with Jonathan and IGN, like he's able to kind of speak more openly about their future plans because he doesn't have 30 people above him watching every word he says,
So he did that interview with Colin a couple weeks ago on Kind of Funny. Who has to listen to that? And like who writes those art? Like how does that work? Like do you just tell one of the contractors, hey, listen to this and write interesting things?
If we think news might come from it, yeah. In the same way that like I also do that with our own content. Like if McCaffrey does an episode of IGN Unfiltered, like we have someone who, oh, awesome, he's talking to Peter Molyneux and listens to that episode, and either McCaffrey will say, hey, I think this would make a good headline, or that person, whether it's someone internal or a freelancer or whoever, will be like, oh, like it's crazy that he said this. I think that should be a headline, and he'll run it by me and McCaffrey and stuff like that. So like I just consume a lot of content in general. Like the interviews that Colin did all during GDC were incredible. And actually everything we're talking about, like please listen to the interview that Colin did with Jason from Kotaku, because Schreier like has much more to say and is I think more articulate than I am, but also just like I think is more in the trenches than I am at this point. And he had so much great insight. I super recommend that for anyone who's been interested in this rambling. But yeah, I think it's a complicated beast. I feel like reviews are complicated in their own way for 1,000 reasons, but it's ultimately you get the game, you know what you can publish by a certain date, you have an embargo, do you have time to play it, can it get up by this date? Like I think it's a little more of an exact science than news. I feel like news is a lot of checking your gut and really digging deep to make sure that like what you're running is it's that balance between being accurate and being timely. And like, yeah, I can spend 6 months verifying something before I run it, but by the time I run it, it's probably old news, or it turns out Spider-Man is coming out on September 21st and it's December. I never knew that, So I think like that doesn't, I don't want to wait so long that it's not topical anymore, but I also don't want to just rush into it and have that situation where we did go on one source or we did kind of pull the trigger too early. And so I don't know, it can be hard. It can also be hard when, one of our peers in the industry, like a competitor in the same way that we have in the past, does break an embargo by mistake. And then it is that awkward position where, well, crap, like all of us, we're waiting until this time on this day to report this news, but whoever it is went early, and then maybe we just source, hey, kind of funny, it just revealed that blah, blah, blah happened.
Hey.
And yeah.
We didn't do it.
Way to break it.
Damn it, Kevin.
So I know it's complicated. It's something that news is like such a weird, I think I forgot in leaving for a little over a year, how kind of on call you feel at all times, like even especially with stuff like celebrity deaths and like things that there's just no way for us to prepare for. It is crazy verifying things that you would just totally take for granted as like you see it on Twitter and you're like watching you guys react to the Invincible news the other day is basically me 100 times a day.
That's
where
so
it's like,
funny.
It's exactly
like, oh, I don't
that.
believe it. This can't be.
And that's exactly what it is. It's like someone on Twitter or someone on the other side of the office, like John Borba stands up and is like, hey, did you guys hear this? And I'm like, oh, what? And then like we go through and like maybe it ends up being BS. I'm like, oh no, that's coming from this.
You idiot, Borbus.
I don't know. It's like, it's such a weird, we live in this weird gray area where like I have to just, essentially I have to just go with what I think in my gut is right. And we totally do get it wrong, and we've run plenty of corrections. And then there are other times where I'm like very proud of the fact that we were first on something, or very proud of the fact that like we handled it well. So it's hard.
That's awesome, man. I got a couple questions from the audience for you.
About news?
No, just about other stuff.
We'll find out what they're
This is
about.
from JDOS2K. How was your time working for a game dev like Gearbox versus the press media like IGN?
It was really educational. I mean, I make fun of Texas a lot, but like I still love the people at Gearbox. Like those people were great to me, and it was a very like I had like a very like familial feeling there because so many of them were older than me or married and had houses, and I was just like this dude in a little apartment. I think I learned more about the process than I thought I would. Just kind of watching how many moving parts there are that go into something. And then by being on the side I was, where I was hosting our panels and I was doing a lot of like behind the scenes blog posts and things like that. And like at the time we were trying to ramp up a podcast and things like that. I was getting this sort of the same experience I had doing interviews for press, except without that, oh, hey, we can't comment on rumors. Like without that barrier. So it was like conversations could go one step further than they ever had. And that was fascinating to me. Like just getting one-on-one time with people who were just like, so smart, like Matt Charles and Paul Hellquist and Anthony Birch and all these people who I felt like I learned so much about their discipline from having conversations with them every day. Could not say enough nice things about like Randy Varnell, Aaron Lindy. Like there are just so many smart people there that taught me things I never would have imagined about. Again, like I use this as an example over and over, but like the amount of time that goes into like an animation loop or like into like making sure that like, hey, like this specific art asset is perfect, or even down to things like working with publishers and the strategy behind release timing and the strategy behind like when you're announcing something and how much you show and when that does leak and when that does get screwed up, how do you react and what do you do? Like I got sort of this weird, because I was technically in the marketing department, and so I was kind of doing this like role as like almost like a historian, I guess, like weirdly, like in that I was from day one trying to be in there watching the pre-production of something to do behind the scenes stuff. And that never ended up really materializing, but I learned a lot from sitting with the various disciplines doing that. And then kind of when I was with the marketing team, I learned a lot of, hey, like this is how many drafts something has to go through before, like, and not even like a press release, but like stuff like the back of the box and the text and menus and the things that are just totally not anything you would ever spend time thinking about. All of that, like every piece of a game now, when I look at it, I feel like I'm thinking of it differently in the same way that before I ever did this, I was an extra. And when I was on a movie set, I totally watch movies differently now because I notice stuff in the background or I think about like changes in location in a way I never did when I was just watching movies, having never set foot on a set. So I think it just gave me kind of this weird, like just barely peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And I should clarify that like I wasn't in like a proper dev role at all. So it's like I understand so little about like engine work or even about like checking in builds and stuff. Like I got like just kind of the like tip of the iceberg on that stuff, just in the rare occasions where I would have to like look at something like in development. But man, like I'm still so ignorant on that stuff.
Yeah.
And on all the tech stuff, obviously.
How do you feel about Anthony Birch talking mad shit on Persona 5 on Twitter?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, he's not the only one I've seen saying they weren't crazy about the localization. I think it's there definitely are. Don't get me wrong. I do think there are a couple weird choices in this localization. I do think that playing through Persona 4, I feel like I had less of that reaction. But I also feel like I'm holding this one to a higher standard in some ways. Plus, having played it in Japanese, I had a little bit more of a weird preconceived notion on certain things.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I mean, Anthony is like, I didn't make it. I didn't make Persona. Like, I think he's allowed to complain.
You're dead to him, Anthony. That's what he says.
I like Anthony a lot.
Zach Walter wants to know, what does Andrew think of Dreams and the future of Media Molecule? He's been a fan of their games before. I'm interested on his thoughts on the future of the studio.
I'm so happy they exist. I'm so happy Sony doesn't like every time I see.
We'll see how long they exist.
Well, it's just every time I see like a Big or Zipper or any of these like smaller studios go away, I'm like, oh, not Media Molecule, and it's I think when every time Sony kind of consolidates their pool of worldwide studios, I understand why. I've never had a moment where I'm like, they shut down Naughty Dog? What? It's never like, I feel like the writing is always going to be on the wall with like a certain brand and not their fault. So like that is never surprising. Little Big Planet I worry about, or I mean, Little Big Planet, Jesus, Media Molecule I worry about because I think Tearaway is awesome on Vita. I don't think it sold really well. Obviously, I don't think that PS4 did any favors.
Tearaway Unfolded, yeah.
Yeah, and so now Dreams to me looks so cool. And I talked to those guys at E3 2015 about it, and then they said more at Paris Games Week, and we've seen so many cool streams, and like I get what they're going for. But I still don't understand that as a $60 project or product. I still don't understand it as something that wasn't just like with PSVR. Like there's so many spots where I was like, oh, like announce it's available now at PSX or make it a pack in with PSVR. Or there are so many beats where I was like, this seems like a smart time to push Dreams. Like this feels like a good empty pocket where now I wonder what their strategy is. But all of that being said, like that's so much more on like the business side. On the creative side, like thank God for Media Molecule, man. Like, keep Sony weird. In the same way, it's like keep Nintendo weird. Like, I want Nintendo to be doing creative things. Like, for every, motion control thing I'll roll my eyes at or weird experiment that they do, I'm also so happy it's happening because it's pushing things forward. And I think it would be really boring if we just had, 3 PS4s in our apartment with different logos in the front of them. I think the same is true for Sony's staple of studios and their library of games, like Horizon, Uncharted, Infamous, like so many things that are just these awesome brands and awesome experiences I've had are great, but I still want those completely off the wall ones. I still want something like Dreams where I can be like, holy crap, like you have to see this, and like want to show it off to people and want to explain, or like marvel it in the same way I would at like a Minecraft creation, be like, holy crap, someone built, and like I did with Little Big Planet, honestly, holy crap, like someone built Final Fantasy VII in Little Big Planet, or holy crap, someone recreated all of Hogwarts in Minecraft. Like, I feel like Dreams has the potential to be that. And the way they were describing it to me way back sounded so cool. Like this idea of like, you are operating in this like creative space where everything can be iterated upon. So it's like, you might be designing something and you want a tree, and you'll search the catalog for tree. And maybe you made a tree 6 months ago, and I take it and I'm like, oh, his tree's really cool, but a branch pointing upward would make it look even cooler. And I add a branch to it. And then your tree, if someone else checks it out, they can either check out the version that I made or roll it back to the one that you made. And the tree that you've placed in your world, you can then accept my changes and edit, or you can keep it how it was. Like all of that, like that's one object. Now think of that on a scale of 10 or 100 or 1,000. Like when you think about this kind of shared creative world and the kind of art people could make, that sounds dope. And especially in VR, like looking at that sounds so cool. But again, like, is that a $60 game? Is there a campaign? What is the campaign? Is it that they made like Little Big Planet? They have these like bespoke levels. And so it's like a racetrack level. So you have a racing game, but it's like, I just don't know what that looks like yet. And I feel like I have such a tenuous grasp on what Dreams is. And that makes me concerned considering it's been shown off for 4 years now, more than 4 years now. Because we first saw it before it was titled at that original PS4 reveal.
Just moving everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was a really long answer to, I think it was cool. I hope it's cool. I want to play it. And, like, I love Little Big Planet. I love Mario Maker. I love Little Big Planet. I'm really bad at creating things, but I love playing things that other people have created. And I especially love just going through random levels in both of those games. So, man, I want Dreams to be that. And I've said for years that, like, the thing I wanted from a Little Big Planet was, let me, and for Mario Maker is let me do it in a 3D plane. Let me make a Mario 64. And like, maybe Dreams is that. Like, like maybe that is the kind of next level of creation things. Because Project Spark kind of tried something like that and that didn't really work. So I don't know. I really want to be enthusiastic about it and I want to be optimistic about it. But the longer we go without seeing anything beyond those gameplay streams makes me worry a little bit. And I do worry about the commercial prospects of it because it would be devastating to see Media Molecule go away. Yeah.
Final question. Do you think that we will ever get Mother 3?
Yes. I do think eventually we'll get it in some virtual console capacity. I
think we're getting it this year.
Ooh.
I think it's going to be at least announced this year.
I want to believe, man. I have been hurt before. It's so funny because you look at the Earthbound community and they're these incredible, dedicated people that have kept something going for 22 years with almost no support. And especially like before Smash, really no support. And then now like Earthbound is on 3DS, it's on Wii U, it's, NES is better known because of Smash. I can go to Walmart and buy a Lucas toy, which just blows my mind. Like that is so crazy. I don't think it's impossible, but I also I think at this point it would be Nintendo just doing it to say, here you go to that niche. I don't see it as a commercial prospect. It's also, I've talked a lot about like, what do you call it? Because it's not Earthbound 2. I feel like that's misleading. They don't want to lose, like there are people who know Lucas from Smash, so you got to get Lucas's name in there. So is it like Earthbound : Lucas's story?
Yeah, I think that's what it would be.
Yeah,
I feel like
I feel like it would be something along those lines. But man, I hope we do. I hope you're right. I'm kind of a natural pessimist at this point because it's just
Nintendo.
There
You've
have
been burned so many times.
Rumors, there have been so many times where it looked like it was going to happen and didn't.
Yeah. All right. Well, Goldfarb, this has been fantastic.
I hope so.
Man, you got to come back more.
Yeah.
Sure.
You have fun stories. You're fun dude to talk to.
Oh, thanks, man. I think you're a fun dude.
Where can people follow you?
I'm Garfep on Twitter which is Greg always regrets
fucking elderly people.
As it goes.
Wait, really?
It's a hard Twitter handle, so that's what we had to come up with. An anagram? No, acronym for what it stood for.
It's not
That's
really
what we came up
What
with.
is it? What?
Oh, it's such a long story.
Okay, then we'll have to have you back another time. But
I'm there. I'm on IGN.
Garf EP was always what I
That's closer.
defaulted to reading it.
Funny you should say that. Yeah, the EP is accurate.
All right, well, you can follow him there and also on IGN where he does all of his other stuff. Yeah, until next time. I love you.
Oh, is that your sign off?
That is my
It is a
sign-off.
sign off.
What a cute sign off.
Yeah,
He's a cute boy.
I'm a cute boy. What's up, party people? If you like that content, subscribe by clicking here to Kind of Funny Games. Or if you want content that's not games related, subscribe by clicking there. If you want to support us on Patreon, boom, right there. Other stuff too, I'm limited to 20 seconds for this. Till next week, I'll see you later.